Hello there, and welcome to Weapon Refine Ideas. In this video I take a look at the newly announced Weapon Refine update, and its characters, and I suggest builds that they can utilise at the moment, and a potential refine that they might get that would better equip them to stand out from the rest of the cast. I'm also going to take a look at the state of refines in general, just having a look at which characters still haven't got their refines in the first couple of years. I hope you find the video interesting and fun, and well, without further ado, let's get started. To start things off, here's a grid showing all the Book 2 units that haven't got refines yet. There's a mixture of legendary heroes, dancers, and Grand Hero Battle Tempest Char units amongst all these, and the colour coding really helps you narrow down which characters might be next. For example, they don't tend to do healers, they haven't done any dancers yet, and they tend to do one Heroic Grail unit per month on average, so you can use this to try and predict the next update. I always find it quite fun to cross these off as we go along, a little bit like a checklist, and also by process of elimination, if one of your favourite characters is here, it's only a matter of time before they get picked. All these characters could use refines, so it's anyone's guess as to who might be next. Then, here's a grid to show all the seasonal units from the first 2 years of the game. I find seasonal units quite the oddity in Fire Emblem Heroes because they're equally as rare and as expensive as brand new 5-star characters, but there's no 40/40 spark, and they only appear at a limited time, just like other new characters that are seasonal. And the only ones that get refines are ones with preference weapons. So it's anyone's guess as to when or if these characters will ever all get refines. I think they will, but I think they're leaving it much too late, in my opinion. But yes, tell me what you think in the comments about what you think of seasonal refines in general. So, starting off the units, we have male and female Grima. These are my favourite units in the entire game, and this is what they come with. So they have a distant counter weapon, and as a dragon, this is quite useful. Most dragons in the game are defined by their preference weapons, so it'd be lovely to see them have something a little bit more than one effect. Male Grima focuses on enemy phase quick riposting, so you bait someone in and then slam them with big damage on return. And female Grima is designed to be a flying tank that can take a few hits, and while she doesn't do as much damage, I think she has a little bit more sustainability, as her ace skill, even in its old version, nullifies the effective bonuses of one of her types, that being the flyer. I'd really love to see male Grima get dragon skin, because he doesn't actually have an ace skill, so there is room for it. But that aside, female Grima gets 2 new skills in her remix, one being Dragon Skin 2, which is an incredibly good skill, 6 to all stats if the opponent initiates or is high on HP, and also I believe it nullifies their bonuses, so it's a really good strong buff for female Grima that only she can use. And the rain skill speed res is perfect. She needs a bit more speed and she needs a bit more damage. Her bulk's relatively fine already, and Dragon Skin already contributes to that very well. This allows her to be a mixed range tank. So yeah, they had the longest intro, but there's certainly a lot to say about these unique units. For their main builds, these are the 2 tanky builds that I'd suggest in their current form. Male Grima is actually very good at utilising his speed because his attack and bulk is already quite good. His speed stat is redeemable to a certain extent, but you do have to heavily invest in it. But when you do, it is actually quite effective. The only problem is that without max investment, you're only really looking at Vengeful Fighter type builds or Bold Fighter builds if you want anything of a result. And it's just not very much anymore these days. There's so many characters like Winter Sophist that have so much more to offer. I mean, Winter Sophist took this build and glorified it and made it extremely potent. Especially when she's not affected by Dragon Slayers, which are a big issue for both of these characters. And then female Grima here, I accidentally put 15 flowers there, so please excuse me on that. But the added bonus of Dragon Skin 2 really helps her run this synergetic build with male Grima, and they can move as one using aerobatics and guidance. These builds work exceptionally well without each other, but together, the joint drive speed and the bond skills and the movement skills all really work hand in hand to create a really solid unit. A duo of Grimas that can go all across the map and cause all kinds of havoc. And even the earth bonus from female Grima on male Grima is really handy because it's speed. So that's always quite exciting. The other build is more of a solo type build. It does more or less the same thing. As you can see here, there's some speed skills, there's mystic boost, just all things that help them be a bit more self-sufficient and not rely on their allies too much. Federa fine. I know it looks like a big boy text, but all it really is a revival effect that has Vantage tagged on. So if their HP reaches 0, this is going off the fact that they have loads of counters that one-shot them, they enter a fallen state. And all the fallen state is a temporary defeat state that isn't counted as a death on legendary maps and etc. unless the other characters die as well. So it allows you an excuse to come back to life after you die, and you come back with half your HP and deal some splash damage, and as a bonus you get Vantage for the next turn, so that especially on Ether Raid's offense it's very useful just to chuck Grima in and use this as a strategy perhaps to take out certain team compositions. Splash damage is also really effective against Fallen Edelgard, so this may be a very good Edelgard counter if they really did go with this. But even then, Edelgard probably wouldn't take much damage from these guys. But we'll just have to see, really. It's a really fun refine, and it's very unique. It might need some balancing and playtesting in order to iron out any overpowered kinks, but really, I think there is potential for a really cool effect that plays on the whole reincarnation of Grima shtick from Awakening. So it'd be really cool to see something like this implemented into the game. Now, this next character will be a lot shorter of an explanation. His name is Gerome, and he is an Axe Flyer from Gen 2. He's one of the many Shursh clones, and ever since Shursh got her Refine, which is a better Brave Axe, characters like Gerome and Ha have just been completely pushed aside, really. Ha didn't even get a Grand Hero Party event copy, because I think they must have forgotten he was in the game. But the whole idea is that it is a high attack def Axe Flyer with middling speed that has a super boon. And it is a trope in the game. Now, he doesn't come with anything particularly special. A dual rally's nice, but it's not a plus. And Poleaxe is a unique weapon, but not really that useful, in my opinion. So nothing really special. Now, how I built him was the Dex Swabber Wyvern Flight set. This allows him to deal a really good amount of damage and become very tanky all of a sudden. He's got solid HP stat, solid def and attack, and his speed, if fully invested, can be doable with this set, this skills. If you're on lower merges, you may just want to stick with Lance Breaker or Quick Riposte, but this is the max investment. This is what Gerome can do if you really set your heart on it. I'd also recommend using Distant Counter, or using a seal that boosts stats like Speed Res 2 or something, Speed Def 2, just to make Wyvern Flight more consistent. You can also use Phantom Speed or Mystic Boost to mitigate the Fury damage. There's a lot you can do with this dude. It's just without a preference weapon, there isn't really much he can do that other characters can't already do. I mean, if you put this exact set on Ha, then he does it slightly better. If you put this exact set on Shursh, it doesn't cost any heroic grails. Jerome's in a really awkward spot, which is why I came up with this for his refine. The Masking Axe is what it's called, and I have no idea if it's going to have the same base effect, but I'm going to go with it anyway. So he will be effective against cavalry foes for my prediction effect. Now, again, this looks chonky, but the bottom half is just explanation. It's just Canto explained, so you don't have to worry about it being too confusing. It's pretty much Canto 2 on Near Trace, and then also a Raging Storm effect. The point of this build is to take down cav lines, so you get repositioned or smited in by your ally character who's buffed you up. He goes in and kills someone in the middle, and then with Raging Storm and potentially Gale Force, you move towards the left or right hand side of the map, and then retreat with Canto after both turns have been used. The Poleaxe will pretty much guarantee your kills against all the foes, And once you Canto back, you could even reposition him out of danger completely. And then in one turn, you've wiped out half the team, and from there it just crumbles. It could also be used in many other instances, as Raging Storm is not cavalry exclusive. You can use, as long as you've initiated combat, it could be used against any team composition. The attack def debuff helps, and the Canto just helps get out of danger. It's just a really cool, fun playstyle that no other character really can replicate. All the Raging Storm units are Edelgards that have armor movement or armor maneuverability. So it would be really cool to see Gerome get something like this. Gunnthra has already had her legendary remix, and it made her such a better unit. Blizzard is already a decent weapon that converts the penalties on opponents into attack power for yourself. Well, it doesn't convert them, it just considers them. Attack Res Solo 4 is excellent for her attack damage output, and Chilling Seal is, or the second version Chilling Seal, is really good because it puts -7 on all stats on selective opponents and a further -7 attack res on surrounding opponents. So there's a lot she can do damage wise now. The only thing is it locks her into a very specific playstyle that, while really good, is more of a one trick style that doesn't have very much sustainability. The way she's built typically is just by boosting her attack with solo skills. Attack Speed Menace, it's not fully implemented on the website yet, but Attack Speed Menace is a skill that can help her be more consistent at doubling. The Def Solo helps her tank a little bit more of retaliation if it takes 2 hits to kill. And generally it's a very simply built character, much like most cavalry tome characters are. So for her refine, I wanted to give her a Canto effect, allowing her to move in and out without the need for allies to use reposition. I also upgraded the base effect to grant speed and res, because the extra speed would be a little bit more useful, as even at max merges she struggles to double naturally. And neutralizing penalties on the unit during combat is not necessary, but it is very useful. She doesn't have a unity skill or a bond force skill, so penalties will be an issue on her. It's just a little bit extra to help her deal damage and prevent her from being debuffed to a point where she can't be used very well. It's very simple, refined, but it works wonders for a cavalry tome unit such as herself to have something like Canto, where she can just run in, run out, and all is well. Spring Catria is the seasonal unit of this batch, and she is an odd pick. In a world where Reinhardt exists, it really is difficult for a blue tome cavalry mage to stand out, and fans of this character are probably fed up of hearing this. Hugin's Egg is not a fantastic weapon. It's pretty much a chill attack res snipe on enemies with the lowest defense points, or res points, I can't remember which one is which. And you have to be above half health to even activate this. And for a character with such low bulk, one hit will likely bring her below 50% straight away. So I'll get on to what I did in a minute, but fodder-wise she doesn't have much. Drive speed's the best thing she has that she can give, and that's available on a 4-star tail 2, so it's very hard to justify going for this character for fodder. Looking at the build I gave her, Blarfox is a lifesaver for many units that don't have preference weapons. This goes for all colours of tomes, except colourless. But all colourless tomes are quite good, so no real issue there. But for characters like the Robins and Catria like this, the Fox tomes are a real good weapon, and an alternative to just using the Blade tome. I mean, Fury Desperation Blade tome is also an option, but I went with the Blarfox tome here just to show you that it's also a viable option. Boosting your attack, speed, and a little bit of def allows her to be an effective duelist, and the lull attack res is that little bit of an extra boost to help your damage output, your bulk, and overall make her a really solid fighter for your team. She doesn't need merges to make this work, but I always put maximum just to showcase what they could be potentially able to do. So Refine, I changed the base effect to work a lot like Chilling Seal. and it's almost exactly the same, perhaps more based on what Rid has. If he gets a remix, he'll probably get something similar to this. But if you're going to have a chill effect, then you may as well have something as good as Gunnthra. So I did. I mean, seasonal units, again, are very rare, and they deserve to have strong effects, because it gives you an incentive to save your orbs and go for them when they come back, or to spend all your orbs when they do arrive. Either way, the orbs are being spent. But the speed res is specific to help Catria, as her speed is middling and her damage is middling. Most of what she has is middling. So any debuffs in the necessary stats will help her perform better. And her refine is similar to what Lewin's refined weapon has at base without the secondary effect. So if her HP is high enough, it gives her Swiss Sparrow, and she can make a follow-up before they can counter. So it makes her like a Reinhardt, but the weapon can debuff enemies, and she gets a bit more speed. She's basically a speedy Reinhardt at this stage, but all the debuffs really help, and can actually work very closely with Gunnthra on the same team. They both snipe different units, and they both thrive off of the opponent's debuffs to help them be stronger. So yeah, there's a lot that Spring Catria is capable of. I have no idea what they'll go with, but I'm playing on the debuff playstyle and the fact that she has to compete with one of the game's greatest units and most efficiently cheap units as well. When Fjorm was given her remix, she suddenly became a little bit better, but she's still missing something. She's a character that, like Gunnthra, is a very one-trick pony type, where you'll bring them in for specific things if you feel like you need them, but otherwise, unless you're a fan of the character, you're not going to be using them very much. The Unity skill was a really good idea to help make pulling Fjorm more satisfying. Even if you don't want to use her, you can use her for a very good skill fodder. And Ice Mirror 2 helps her be more effective and work a lot like Legendary Corrin. But what sets Legendary Corrin apart is that she has much more stats, much more speed, much more damage, and is overall just a better unit. She even comes with Distant Counter, which is better fodder, in my opinion, than the Attack Def Unity. Attack Res Unity is a very good skill, but Attack Def is not quite as good. That's just my opinion, though. She has a Distant Counter weapon, Fjorm, and Ice Mirror and Shield Pulse work perfectly well with this. Attack Def Unity is actually very preferable for her because it balances her Def and Res out. But as far as a build is concerned, this is pretty much what you'd want. It's boosts the speed so you can do follow-ups, and if you're not merging her, you can just use Quick Riposte. There's not much else you can do without getting rid of her main gimmick. You can do Fortress Defense Res, but then you might be lacking the damage, as her attack, even at max investment, as you can see, is not that high. So another build you could potentially do is Flowing Lance here with Distant Counter. Again, though, why would you give Distant Counter to a Distant Counter weapon unit unless this is 2018 and they haven't done dual skills yet? Or tier 4A skill? I don't know. It's a bit of an awkward unit to use. She always has been in a bit of an awkward spot with her balanced stat line, but she does have really good bulk and a redeemable speed stat, so there is potential here for her to get stronger. So how did this inspire the weapon refine? So I kept the base effect the same, much in uniform with all Distant Counter refines thus far, and rather than giving her a Unity skill, which is what I gave her last time, I gave her Bonus Doubler. This allows her middling stats to be Jack of all trades, Master of none to Master of all. Good bulk, good speed, good damage. It just works very well for her. I gave it 2 spaces of Ally Clause because it works with her skills anyway, so while it's a restriction and a balance, it also works well with what she is required to set up anyway, so it's not going to change the playstyle. And she makes a guaranteed follow-up attack if foe initiates. This saves the need to run Quick Riposte. I was originally going to make the guaranteed follow-up attack dual phase, but then I thought it might be a little bit pointless if she's not very good on player phase anyway, and it might even be slightly overpowered, so I made her enemy phase focused, so she can just spend all her time tanking that. I'd recommend then putting Mystic Boost on the Sacred Seal to keep her HP going. But yeah, that's Fjorm. I hope she gets something like this, or maybe even something more creative, something gimmicky perhaps. But as long as it catches her up to being able to effectively tank characters that, well, it's what she was originally intended to be, as a ranged counter, and most ranged characters will kind of steamroll through her at this stage. So hopefully she'll get a good refine. But what happened to Dorcas? Well, Dorcas is in this batch because apparently he's a Book 2 unit. I was always stuck as to whether Dorcas was Book 1 or Book 2. Up to now I've treated him as Book 1, but given the last Distant Counter update, I realised that perhaps they treated him as a Book 2 character. It was in that hazy time where there was a crossover from Gen 1 to Gen 2 BST, and it was a lot less clear-cut than every generation past then, where it's been a lot more clear. Usually it's just by book. Even Gen 3 was cut short, though. But anyway, back to Dorcas. He's a character that's been needing a refine for a good long time because, well, as a distant counter unit, low speed and low res really don't mix. Even with quick riposte, you often don't live long enough to make your follow-up attack. If your res is that low, they hit you, you hit back, they kill you, and then you never make your follow-up with Draconic Aura. You know, it's just not going to happen. So it's really nice that he's getting a refine. Infantry Pulse is brilliant fodder. It's really fun setup on specific teams and defense teams if you really want to mess around with that. Dorcas himself could use it, but without investment, 45 HP isn't always high enough for this sort of team building. But with investment, certainly he could be the one to use it, which is rather nice. Quick Riposte 3 is lovely fodder as well, even if it's available at a 4-star level, but you have to promote them to 5-star to get the full Quick Riposte 3. Tsubaki I'm looking at. But any moment they could release a demote character with Quick Riposte, so I really don't think it's worth foddering Dorcas for Quick Riposte 3. Especially when Quick Riposte 3 isn't as useful nowadays. It's good if you've got a unit you really love that thrives with it, but you've probably already done it by now. From now on, I wouldn't do it. How I would build Dorcas would be to give him attack res unity to protect his res and boost his damage output. Rupture Sky could be replaced with Moonbow if necessary. I'm just giving him max potential. And then I gave him a bunch of speed boosting skills. You could potentially run the Quick Riposte Sacred Seal or B skill and replace all the speed effects for death reducing ones or attack boosting. So lull attack death, joint drive attack, and attack res solo, for example, or def res solo. Or just replace the seal for quick riposte, of course, rather than boosting speed. He's not fast enough for dodge effects like close call and repel, but he is certainly speedy enough with investment that when maximized he can run a little bit more speed. So he is a bit of an awkward spot for a distant counter, much like Ryoma was before he got his refine, and we all know what happened to Ryoma. He got a very nice refine. For Dorcas, his refine, I gave him, of course, no altered base effect, but I really struggled to find something that would really boost him. So I went with a really easy condition to meet. So foe initiating, or if foe's HP is above or equal to 75%, that he would inflict attack def -6 on foe during combat. And also he'd get bonus special cooldown on both phases if he meets that condition. So you can get his specials out more quickly, which improves his damage output. He's reducing the defense points, which makes him hit harder, and he's inflicting attack on them, which makes them deal less to him. So mages will be less effective against him, and he'll be more effective against them. All around, it helps him deal with every character in the game. Really easy calls, really simple weapon, but for Dorcas, he needs something like this in order to just function normally, and then the other skills can help boost him to be even better. So while this looks simple, remember this is distant counter, attack def -6, and special cooldown charge all in one simple like package, and that's really good for him. I do hope he gets something like this. It'd be really nice. So that brings me to the end of this Weapon Refine Ideas video. I hope you learnt a little bit about these characters and how they could potentially be a threat on the battlefield and how you might want to build them, and also perhaps inspired you with some ideas as to what their refines might be. It would be really nice to see all these characters get something cool, because there are a lot of fan favourites here. Fjorm and Gunnthra are some of the original original characters, and I know they're special to a lot of people. The Robins have always been very popular characters throughout FEH, especially the Fallen variants. Fallen characters in general are very popular alts for characters. And then you got Gerome, who's been sidelined for most of FEH, and it'd be really nice to see him get something to set him apart from everyone else. And then of course you got Dorcas, and Dorcas is Dorcas. And we got a seasonal unit as well. Seasonal units deserve more refines. It'd be really nice to see them get more as time goes on. But hey, we'll see what they have in a few days. And for now I say goodbye, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. And I hope you look forward to the refines as they come out. I'm really interested to see what they do with this batch. I wonder if they've learnt from the last Distant Counter refine update about what they'd rather do for these guys. If there's anything they'd like to do more of or less of, or if they want to make them even better. Who knows? But until the next episode, goodbye for now. Stay safe.